All right. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to FYI Academy, where it's a place to learn, grow, and connect at FYI. Today, we are pleased to have not just one, but two amazing presenters at FYI Academy. First, we welcome Victoria Clifford, our Facility Security Officer and Insider Threat Program Senior Official. With nearly 2 years at FYI and over 18 years of experience in the classified security field, Victoria has played a critical role in managing security operations and ensuring the protection of sensitive information. Joining her is Jake St. Pierre, our alternate facility security officer, who brings over 20 years of military experience and more than 5 years of experience in the private sector's classified security field. Together, Victoria and Jake have supported numerous classified programs and customers, making invaluable contributions to our organization's security initiatives. Please welcome Victoria and Jake.
We appreciate that introduction, Anya. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to learn a little bit more about insider threat and cybersecurity awareness. And thank you, FYI leadership, for having a platform where employees can learn from one another and for allowing us this opportunity as well. Just a little housekeeping. We'll be placing everyone on mute to minimize any background noise. But please feel free to unmute yourself to participate, as this presentation is meant to be interactive. Jake, in particular, may have a few questions he's hoping the audience will chime in on. Also, just a quick disclaimer, insider threat material covers workplace violence as well, which can be a sensitive topic to some, so just please keep that in mind. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's today's agenda. I'm going to be reviewing the company's facility clearance information. Jake will then be talking about the insider threat. I'll cover some information on cyber awareness, and our summary will discuss what you can do to protect yourself. Next slide, please. Okay. As some of you may or may not know, FYI is considered a cleared company and has what's called a facility clearance level, and it's at the top secret level. This means that FYI can pursue and work on classified programs. There are approximately 12 to 13,000 or so cleared companies in the United States out of the whopping 33.2 million of American businesses. So the math on that is that we're in a group of 0.00037%. As such, FYI is required to employ a Facility Security Officer, FSO, and an Insider Threat Program Senior Official, ITPSO. Also, because of recent database mandates, a second database user is required, and we therefore have an alternate Facility Security Officer, AFSO. So that's where Jake and I come in. We're tasked with ensuring our company adheres to all the rules and regulations that come with the privilege of accessing classified information, but we can't and don't and haven't done it alone. In our first Defense Counterintelligence Security Agency, it's a mouthful, DCSA, audit in over 6 years, we received a commendable rating. Only 15% of those cleared companies receive such a high rating. So we just wanted to take a minute and thank those of you that supported or participated in this year's past audit. We hope to keep instilling a culture of security here at FYI and to provide some transparency and education to our employees, whether you're cleared or uncleared. Far too often, these classified security processes and procedures remain shrouded in mystery, and only a select few of employees truly understand what's involved in protecting national security, our company's information, and each other's personal information. With all that said, we hope you find today's presentation both interesting and informative. We also hope that you'll walk away a little bit more empowered to protect yourself and your loved ones from the many pitfalls that await us in our digital environment, both personally and professionally. It's where we live, right? So each year moving forward, we will tailor our security briefings and material around a central theme. To kick off this upcoming year's theme of be prepared, be proactive, we have created this presentation focusing on insider threat and cybersecurity awareness. The slides will be sent out so that you will have access to the links to help protect yourself now and in the future. So without further ado, we'll jump right in.
All right, thanks everyone for joining us for this presentation. Last month was National Insider Threat Awareness Month, and this month happens to be Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So we felt it was prudent to kind of share some of the relevant topics in order to raise awareness here at FYI. So let's jump into the first thing, which is insider threat. All right, we thought it'd be a good idea to start off with a statistic, and this statistic is from the 2023 Cost of an Insider Threat Global Report. And that stat is the total average cost of an insider risk increased in 2023 to 16.2 million per organization, taking an average of 86 days to identify and contain. Those are big numbers. That's a lot of work lost. And it can be crippling for some companies, as we'll see later on in these slides. What we want to illustrate here is that with that statistic is that insider threats are costly and a company can be impacted, as well as some of the employees' lives potentially. All right, we're going to get interactive here. What comes to mind when you think about insider threat? Go ahead and come off mute, yell it out, throw it in the chat window, whatever you think. What comes to mind when you think of an insider threat? Anything, word association.
Data breach.
A data breach, that's a good one. Anybody else?
Yep, Demetrius put spy in the chat. Good.
Yep, exactly. Spy or espionage. All right, another one that people think of is workplace violence, and those are all relevant. And what you can see on the screen is espionage, workplace violence, unauthorized disclosure of security information, and inside attacks can be employees in the organization with bad intentions, or cyber spies impersonating contractors, third parties, or even remote workers. They may work autonomously or as a nation state, as part of a nation state. They may work in crime rings or competing organizations. Well, they might also be completely remote, third-party suppliers or contractors located all over the world. They usually have some sort of legitimate access to the organization's systems and data or information. Malicious insiders have that distinct advantage in that they already have authorized access to the company's network or information or assets, or even their people. They may have accounts that give them access to critical systems or data, and it may make that easy for them to locate it and circumvent security controls and send it outside of the organization. All right, let's get into the who. The who for insider threat can be examined with a simple math formula. Opportunity plus crisis equals vulnerability. Insider threats often presented with an opportunity, whether it be systems access or recruitment by a foreign intelligence entity or FYI, or a company looking for proprietary information from a competitor. The opportunity combined with a crisis, think of things like indebtedness, mental health, substance abuse, relationship issues, or even work performance, can create a vulnerability. You think of vulnerability, you think of things like loneliness or the need to fix your financial issues or stress, or empathy, or even the need for publicity or recognition. And how can that vulnerability be exploited? Well, bad actors can get involved, or even that potential insider threat can seek out recruitment from a foreign entity. Bad actors can use common sites to gain our trust through social media, through things like Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Snapchat, Instagram, as Vicky is going to illustrate later. Now, what do we look for? What are some of the signs or indicators? Go ahead and come off mute, throw it in the chat. What are the things that you look for to identify an insider threat? Anybody think of any red flags or any indicators? Anything that comes to mind when you think of a potential insider threat?
I'll say unauthorized access to sensitive areas.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yep. Going into sensitive areas without being allowed to. I see one in the comment too. Change behavior, constant nervousness. Absolutely. Yep, those are great. Anybody else have any? All right, well, we're going to go into them.
You're getting some, yeah, you're getting some good comments in the chat.
Yep. Oh, there's a couple more. Yep. Asking questions without need to know. That's a great one.
Really good.
Asking specific information unrelated to your job role. Yep. Really probing or pulling for information outside of your scope. All right, here's a chart, and that illustrates a number of those red flags. And we call those red flags potential risk indicators, or PRIs. Now, you take a look at some of these on the chart, and obviously some of them are more serious than others. And it doesn't mean that just because somebody has professional performance issues or they're working odd hours necessarily means that they are an insider threat. But what we do is you take that whole person concept and examine that, and then you add up the aggregate of those PRIs. And with an opportunity and a crisis, it helps investigators identify when intervention is needed. And one other point on that slide is that these PRIs don't just apply to the cleared population. Anyone can exhibit a PRI, and anyone can be an insider threat. So just take a minute and review a couple of those PRIs. We're going to be using them in the next few slides. So just make note. All right, how does damage occur? I like to kind of think of them in three buckets. With espionage, there are plenty of foreign nations that are regularly gathering our information. I think everybody knows that. Unclassified information is just as valuable. If you'd like to know what I mean by that, just take a minute and Google 5 aircraft that China stole from other countries. It shows some of these similarities or coincidences is in exaggerated quotes here, between the US and Chinese defense air vehicles are similar. We've added that link at the end of the slides as well if you're interested in that read. It's pretty interesting. Unauthorized disclosure, the loss of national security data, both classified and unclassified, hurts the position of the US, as well as our company and other industry companies. It's our duty to protect that information. With workplace violence, it's all over the news. We've all seen stories of these incidents. If you see something, say something. It's as easy as that. And with all these types of damage, we often think about protecting the warfighter or protecting the end user of this data or information or equipment. And for me, when I was deployed overseas, counting on each piece of equipment that I'd use to work exactly the way it was intended was important. And if a bad actor had access to that information, or there was some sort of sabotage to that equipment, or that vulnerability was exposed, my time overseas could have been a lot shorter. So, that's why it's important to me on how we protect that stuff and we focus on where that damage occurs. And one other point that I want to drive home here is that, it only takes one person to report to be able to stop what could potentially be a tragedy or a significant loss of company information or even national security interests. All right, let's get into some fun stuff. Let's look at some examples. All right, reflecting back on your PRI slides from a few minutes ago, go ahead and take a moment and read this profile about Candace. And tell me some things that stand out for you, some PRIs, maybe some notes in her profile that stand out. Go ahead and punch them into the chat window, come off mute, holler them out. Anybody see anything that stands out here? Anything in the facts or the profile? Unreported travel, that's a huge one.
Just about all of them.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you could put a bow on that one and roll it up into to all of them. Yep, very concerning. Exactly.
High
All right,
value items, high value items.
Yep, that's one too. All right, so we can see some examples there, the PRIs that we looked at on the previous slide. Unreported contact with foreign persons, frequent personal travel beyond her known income. So those are all important. All right, we got 2 more of these, so let's look at those as well. All right, Gabriel, U.S. Navy sailor. What do you see here that stands out to you? Anything from the PRI slide? Anything in his fact or profile that stands out? I think the big one here was there's possibly some mental health issues. There's some issues there. Definitely, yep, Nina, some anger issues as well. Anybody else have some input? All right, let's look at one more. Jonathan, he's got a TS clearance as well as a Q clearance, which is the equivalent at DOE. And he has access to some restricted data. Does anybody see anything here? I didn't expect anybody to really report anything here. There's not a lot in his profile, you know, just because he has a TS or he has a Q clearance or he has access to restricted data doesn't necessarily mean that he is an insider threat. So a little bit of a surprise for you. These previous examples, these are all real world case studies on insider threat. So the next 3 slides, we're going to reveal who these people actually are or were. All right, Candace. She's an actual office management specialist with the Department of State. This example had some glaring red flags, as we said, all of them that hadn't been reported, and had these things been reported, could have prevented the disclosure of the information. Candace's actions resulted in the loss of internal documents from the State Department, and she pleaded guilty to a charge of conspiracy to defraud the United States. And in these slides, we've included the actual CDSE case study with all the relevant information. There's some more details too about each one of these. Right, we remember Gabriel Romero. As you can see, Gabriel's actions significantly impacted the lives of those around him. And unfortunately, a lot of these PRIs went largely ignored by his chain of command. And, you know, just want to illustrate that if you feel your concerns aren't being taken seriously, please escalate, please seek alternative reporting avenues, and, you know, plead your case. Every report helps. All right. Lastly, there's actually 2 here, Jonathan and Diana, husband and wife. And as you notice, their there weren't a lot of PRIs or any at all that were exhibited in this case. Jonathan and Diana worked in secrecy to communicate the restricted data to the FBI. Both Jonathan and Diana were sentenced to prison time for their actions. And interestingly, the FBI and other investigative agencies, they're always working behind the scenes to try and thwart insider threat. And in this case, Jonathan sent a package of Navy documents to a foreign government with a sample of that information. And he wrote that, he was interested in selling that information. He included a return address and instructions for how to establish encrypted communications. Jonathan believed he was corresponding with a foreign government, when in actuality he was communicating with the FBI. So it can reasonably be assumed that the FBI was working with some relevant indicators here, and they identified Jonathan as an insider threat. All right, reporting. We like to think of reporting as mandatory, similar to when we run into child abuse cases. It's that mandatory reporting. If it's there, we have to report it. There's no real exact threshold for what meets that definition in that first bullet of the NISPOM. They call out some topics, adverse information, security violations, those types of things. But what we tell everyone is use your intuition. If your gut says that something's off, go with it, report it, raise your concerns, and be proactive. All right, and with that, next up we have Victoria on cyber awareness.
All right, so we're, like we said in the beginning, we're trying to cover two topics, so everything's a little bit at the high level, but we didn't want the entire presentation to focus about protecting, the company or government sensitive information. So we've included some information and tips on how to protect yourself and your loved ones. There are two opportunities to cause harm here, right? So we all have FYI email addresses and could therefore put the FYI organization and data at risk, which of course, includes HR personnel information as with any company. Then of course we have our employees deployed to government customer sites who could also be putting those systems and data at risk. So in the slides that follow, we're going to illustrate just a few of the ways someone could quite innocently and unintentionally cause harm to the company, our information, and even national security. So we all need to do our part by, again, being prepared and being proactive. So even as a security professional who's been inundated with training and memos, guidance and rules, you name it, I really find myself struggling with some of the concepts of cyber awareness and security. Sometimes it feels like kind of technical or I don't know, overwhelming. I can tell you it's exhausting. That's for sure. But I'm going to try to break some of this down into more relatable concepts or action items. So I apologize for those of you out there with a more robust or technical background for this, simplifying some of this information. Remember, the goal here isn't to scare, it's to simply be aware and then to incorporate some relatively easy, proactive safety measures, getting those in place. So next slide, please. Okay. What is cyber awareness? So cyber awareness involves being mindful of cybersecurity in your day-to-day situations, being aware of dangers, things like browsing the web and checking email, interacting online. Those are all components of the cybersecurity awareness concept. The awareness requires regular training and staying informed of the ever-evolving threats. The bad guys are almost always one step ahead of us, guys. You need to understand the countermeasures and, how to best defend yourself. Currently, phishing is the most prevalent cyber crime, and it's just a kind of a creative word for a scam. And the end goal is to trick people into revealing sensitive information, whether it's your personal information, financial, or proprietary. Most of us were either taught or learned how to be aware of our surroundings. And what we need to do is quite literally translate those best practices that have become almost automatic to the digital environments. So keep the following examples in mind as we review some of the more common cyber threats in the next few slides. Um, when we're lost or in new surroundings or situations that could make us vulnerable, like I don't know, back in the mall heydays, you didn't park in the furthest spot under the street light that wasn't working. You weren't reading emails on your phone, oblivious to everything around you while you were walking to your car. Hopefully you parked close and under a light. You probably looked around, maybe you had your car keys out and ready, or you even did something like carry something for protection, like pepper spray. You didn't whip out stacks of cash while walking into the bank. You tried to avoid distractions. You probably didn't tell your life story to someone on a first date or wear a sign advertising that you're a single mom who travels a lot for work. Um, you shared your photos of your family vacation after you got home. Maybe you've installed a home security system or invested in better locks. Maybe you've even recently had to do something to thwart having your catalytic converter stolen. That mall, that's now Amazon or Temu, Shein, whatever you do for your online shopping, eBay, Facebook Marketplace. The bank I referenced, it's maybe an all online bank now, like Ally. The stacks of cash, maybe it's cryptocurrency, whether that's now or in the future. The first date or the bar club encounter, that's now Tinder or Happen or Coffee Meets Bagel. Example of advertising personal information? Well, we kind of do that quite regularly on Facebook and X and Insta, Snapchat, YouTube, TikTok. The list goes on and on. The security systems and the alarms and all those other well-known safety precautions that we take, they now have new words, right? Like multi-factor authentication, VPN, biometrics, using unique passwords, and staying up to date on antivirus software. So, speaking of viruses, let's take a look at some that can make our system sick or compromise our safety. They're no different than actual viruses when you think about it. Next slide, please. All right. So, spear phishing. As we mentioned in the previous slide, phishing is the most widely used cyber crime technique. Traditional phishing attacks are mass blasts of communications, usually via email, to business users or consumers. That's us, right? They're posing as reputable companies or parties with the hopes of obtaining credentials or money. Excuse me. Examples of generalized phishing would be when scammers send you an email claiming that you have won a prize or you have the opportunity deal of a lifetime. Phishing attacks prioritize quantity in hopes of luring as many people into the trap or onto the hook as possible. Spear phishing, on the other hand, takes time and effort and a fair amount of research and psychological trickery. Spear phishing attacks prioritize quality over quantity. Spear phishing emails, texts, or even phone calls are highly personalized for a specific organization or individual. These attacks are much more likely to deceive the potential victims due to the amount of research and the time spent personalizing those messages that appear to be from legitimate senders. The personalized nature of spear phishing attacks is what makes them dangerous and, frankly, easy to fall for. Hackers use reconnaissance methods in their research so that they can increase the likelihood of a successful attack. They frequent social media sites, again, like Facebook or LinkedIn, to gather personal information about you. They also map out your network or your personal contact, which gives them more context to creating a trustworthy message. More sophisticated attackers may also use machine learning algorithms to scan through massive amounts of data and identify high-level individuals that they most want to target. Being equipped with your personal data, the spearfishers can then craft a seemingly legitimate email that grabs your attention. Many people let their guard down because of that personalized message, and you don't think twice before clicking on a link or downloading an attachment. However, this mistake can lead to serious consequences, such as stolen personal information or a malware infection. Because of the ease and availability of phishing toolkits, even hackers with minimal technical skills can launch phishing campaigns. The people behind these campaigns run the gamut from individual hackers to organized cyber criminals. Next slide, please. Excuse me. All right, whaling, whale fishing. Whaling used the same personalized strategy as spear phishing attacks, except the attackers are specifically targeting high-level management. Think C-suite, CEO, CFO, CIO, to expose financial and confidential information. Whaling attacks hope to extract more valuable and even classified information by taking down big targets, which can magnify the damage inflicted upon an organization. A terrible domino effect, right? The attackers take their time developing the trust of the victim and can maybe even provide proof of who they claim they are, which is usually a fellow executive or mentor. And in reality, they're impersonating the executives known to these associates. The example on the screen highlights a hedge fund founder. The attacker gained access to the company's network after the executive clicked on a fake Zoom link. Think about how easy that could happen, right? That then installed malware. So the email accounts were then compromised, bogus invoices were created, and cash transfer requests were approved, resulting in $9.2 million total loss for that company. And unfortunately, in this case, the firm was forced to close. Next slide, please. All right. There's a ton of wares out there, right? Malware, ransomware. We're going to cover just a few of the more common ones. So malware is short for malicious software. Its purpose is to damage electronics, namely computers. And much like phishing being the broader term with various phishing types that we just described, malware can be seen as that umbrella of many types of damaging intrusions or infections. So various types of malware allow for spying, backdoor administration control, unfettered, unauthorized remote access to a target's device. Once they gain control of your machine or machines in question, they can install and remove programs, hijack webcams, which is super creepy, manipulate files, and harvest login credentials and other sensitive data. They impersonate legitimate users in order to easily download additional malware, compromising yet more computer systems and devices across the network. It's designed to steal sensitive information, which again could include credentials. In this case, they can steal screenshots, again, the webcam access. There are examples of audio hijacking, your geolocation, and even key logging data. One of the more common phishing tactics is to lure users into opening a file packaged up as a Microsoft Office document, the stuff that we all use, PowerPoint, Word, and that's how the malware is distributed. Given its popularity and pervasiveness, this tactic is as insidious as it is common. So if you see a suspicious email in your inbox with a file extension, be sure to check that it's from a trusted sender. Ask before you open and possibly unleash what could be malware onto the entire network, whether again at FYI, your personal or a government site. Next slide, please. Again, another where. I'm going to talk a little bit about ransomware. Ransomware is an attack where an infected host encrypts your data and then they hold it hostage until you pay the attacker a fee. Recent ransomware attacks have demonstrated that hackers have begun threatening to leak or sell that data too, which increases the potential damage of these kinds of attacks, exponentially. There are countless types of ransomware, but certain groups are especially nefarious. One such group recently targeted a number of organizations that are critical to the US economy and the infrastructure, including the food and agricultural industry. Think about the consequences of that. The highest ransom on record so far is 12.5 million paid. And much like malware, attackers can deploy ransomware to both businesses or us, individuals, through the spear phishing campaigns and by drive-by downloads. Once that malware is installed on the victim's machine, it's going to either prompt you with a pop-up or it'll direct you to a website where you're informed that your files are encrypted and will only be released if you cough up the ransom. So since the arrival of cryptocurrencies, which simplify anonymous transactions, we, the general population, is even at greater risk of ransomware attacks. And because ransom as a service kits, again, there's these kits that the bad guys can go out and buy. They're really easy to use and pretty easy to find on the dark web. So this attack could come from a beginning hacker as long as they have the money to buy that kit. Next slide, please. All right, the last of the wares for today. Spyware is yet another type of malware that aims to gather personal or organizational data. It'll track or sell your web activities, so your searches, history, downloads, capture your bank account information, and even this is where stealing a person's identity can come in. There's multiple types of spyware, and each one of them employs a unique tactic to track you. Ultimately, spyware can take over another device, exfiltrating the data or sending personal information to an unknown entity without your prior knowledge or consent. How's this happen? It's when a user carelessly accepts a random prompt or a pop-up, maybe through downloading software or upgrades from an unreliable source, opening email attachments from unknown senders, or pirating movies and music. So thanks to, again, crimeware kits that are now readily available, this type of attack can come from anyone and anywhere. But more often than not, it'll originate from some type of organization that's looking to sell your information to yet a third party. Next slide, please. A little bit about viruses. In particular, macro viruses are a computer virus written in the same macro language that is used for software applications, right? So applications like Microsoft Office, Excel, PowerPoint, all the stuff we use, they allow macro programs to be embedded in the documents for good reasons, right? But those macros are run automatically when the document is open, which provides a distinct mechanism by which malicious computer instructions can spread. So this is one of the reasons it's super dangerous to open unexpected attachments in emails or emails from unrecognized senders. A lot of antivirus programs can detect macroviruses. However, the behavior can still be kind of difficult to detect. Macroviruses are often spread through phishing emails, again, containing the attachments that have been embedded with the virus. Because that email looks like it came from a credible source, many of us open them. Once infected, though, it can jump from document to document on your computer and infect each of them. So they're spread whenever a user opens or closes that infected document. They run on applications, not on operating systems. So the most common method of spreading them is by share file when you're on a network, or opening a file attached to an email. They've kind of fallen out of vogue primarily because of antivirus software. They're able to better detect it, but they still represent a major threat. And if you do a cursory Google search for macro viruses, it's gonna yield instructions for creating them and tools that can assist somebody like me, zero technical school skills. I'm not a coder. I could learn how to create one of these macro viruses. So in theory, anyone with internet access could create one of these with ease. Next slide, please. In the spirit of time, I'm going to actually skip this open redirection. Again, these slides will be sent out, so you can review open redirection at your leisure. Next slide, please. Perhaps the scariest cybercrime or scam going is the social engineering attack. So, social engineering is a term used for a broad range of malicious activities, accomplished through psychological manipulation to trick users into making security mistakes or giving away that sensitive information. What makes social engineering especially dangerous is that it relies on our human error, the mistakes that we make, rather than those vulnerabilities in software or operating systems. Mistakes made by legitimate users are they're much less predictable. We don't necessarily know when we're going to make a mistake, so it makes it much harder to identify and prevent. Social engineering attacks come in, again, many different forms and can be performed anywhere where human interactions are involved. Usually a perpetrator will first investigate you, gather that necessary background information, then they'll gain your trust and provide stimuli for subsequent actions or follow-up that would break security practices, such as revealing sensitive information or having you grant access to critical resources. Um, Most commonly, it's going to come in the form of phishing emails. So that's why we kind of hammer that problem home. Other forms include pretexting, whether the attacker creates a really good pretext to steal important data, bait and switch, or quid pro quo, in which the attacker is going to offer you something desirable in exchange for providing your login credentials. Um, Really relevant to FYI and our business model is that we're seeing more and more of these social engineering attacks centered around fake job offers, where I'm using air quotes here, the recruiter or hiring manager will con the unsuspecting candidate into installing software or eliciting information from them, whether it's classified, proprietary, or your personal information. So when you stop and think about standard interview questions like, tell me about a roadblock you've encountered during a recent high profile project, or what's the most technical assignment you've had and what did you enjoy the most about it? You're providing this, again, air quote, interviewer with insights about projects or your customer, the company, and obviously yourself by answering these super common, innocent sounding questions, except there is no job, and that wasn't a real recruiter or hiring manager you were talking to. Next slide, please. All right. So in summary, I know that was a lot. Apologize here. What can you do? In keeping with the medical analogies of viruses and infections, how do you stay healthy? Well, first, we encourage each of you to conduct your own risk assessment. It's Risk assessment is just a fancy word for a survey. You don't need to write it down. It doesn't have to be anything formal. Do it just in your head, driving in or out of work, in the shower, whatever the case may be. You need to develop a cybersecurity plan. Review your life through the lens of that bad guy. What can you do to protect yourself? You need to review your plan regularly since there's always new and evolving threats. And then you need to stick to the plan. Remain aware, remain skeptic, because that one usually emotionally driven exception or moment of weakness will probably be the one with the heaviest cost. Because if you think about your average work week and all that you accomplished during those 40 hours or so, the bad guys, whether they're the insider threat that Jake highlighted or cyber exploiters, they work just as long and just as hard because technically that's their job, that's their source of income. So they research your habits, your political views, your social life, professional profiles by trolling LinkedIn and Facebook. They exploit and capitalize on anything that they can, such as loneliness or need for acknowledgement, financial enticements, and sadly enough, even your good nature or empathy. Next slide, please. All right, so here's the good stuff, right? What do you do? How do you protect yourself? Well, remember our 2025 security theme, be prepared, be proactive. So here are some best practices and suggestions that can get you started on that defensive cybersecurity plan. Use multi-factor authentication or biometrics when prompted or possible. Don't recycle your passwords and regularly change them. I know it's horrible. We all have 718 of them. um Use that preview pane or the reading pane when working in Outlook. Keep your social media profiles private. It's worth mentioning not to overshare, especially when you're not from home, when you're not at home, when you're away from home or on a vacation. Do your homework before accepting friend requests or swiping right or endorsing someone or something. Examine those URLs. Use a website checker. We've included a link for a website checker at the end of this presentation. Go ahead and if something doesn't feel right or it's a new site, punch it into the website checker and see. Call the bank, call the financial institution directly rather than responding to those texts or those emails. You know, the number on the back of the card or on a statement. Um, Maybe use different email addresses for different purposes. This way, you're going to keep your online identities that are associated with each of those efforts separate. Delete browser cookies and clear your browser history on a regular basis, because saved cookies and searches and web history can actually point the bad guy back to information like home address, family information, or other personal data. Immediately report any unusual cyber or insider threat activity, even if you did something you weren't supposed to. Don't be embarrassed. There's nothing to be embarrassed about that. I thought it was a legitimate email. I opened it and I clicked on the attachment, and I don't think I should have. Let us know. Let MSP, I'm sorry, FSI, our managed service provider, know that you've received a suspicious email. Send it to them to the address on the screen. Delete it from your inbox and try not to respond or click on any links. If any of these things happen, make sure you let Jake or I know. And the most important thing is to trust your intuition. It's gotten you this far. So one last comment is that if maybe you're on a government site and you have an incident and you don't know who to go to, who your government site security POC is, just reach out to your FYI program management team and we'll figure it out together and get you to the right people. So I know it was a lot. I apologize. We're getting close to the hour, but we're ready to take any questions you would have. Those are the resources and references that we've mentioned throughout the presentation. And if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them here and now, or if it's something that you want to discuss privately, you can email us, call my cell, however you feel most comfortable asking your questions or requesting additional information. So that's it. Nobody has any questions?
Hey, Victoria, this is Steve. Obviously, great work. That was an amazing presentation, so thank you for that. I was just curious. I know you sent there were some links on there about some resources and tools. I think one of the things that can be really stressful with this topic is that it's ever changing, and there's new threats that kind of come out of nowhere, and
Mhm.
things that we're not even aware of, especially if you're not super tech savvy.
Yep.
Does that kind of address in maybe those resources, or is there something that you like to keep yourself educated on, especially with new arrival technology and things, just to be on the lookout for?
Yeah, Jake, can you go back for a second? So I think the most helpful, there we go. Most helpful link there, Steve, is that Better Business Bureau Scam Recovery Guide. These websites will keep their information up to date, right? That's their job. So like you can click on that link today, and that stuff, guys, will cover things like, the IRS called. The IRS doesn't call; they only mail you their bills. Things like that. So all those types of scams, in addition to some of the cyber ones that we discussed, it's the Better Business Bureau's job to keep a guide up to date with what's out there today. So click on it today, see what's out there. Click on it next week, there will be something new. So that's why I say it's work, and that's also why I said it's exhausting. It's not just going to come flowing into your inbox about what to be wary of. We do plan on sending out more communications, possibly maybe like a newsletter that are going to address some tips to stay safe, both physically and virtually, on a much more regular basis. The FYI family can let us know if there's any other security trainings or presentations that they'd be interested in. Safety while traveling, because that's also an ever moving target. A country that you went to yesterday was safe, and now tomorrow it's not. OPSEC best practices, ask the FSO. We're absolutely approachable. Any questions that you have, just send them our way. We'd be happy to do some of the research for you. But if you want to stay in the know yourself, a lot of these websites stay up to date with what's out there and trending. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you very much.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Anybody else?
Yeah, hi Victoria. This is Geetam. I'm new. We haven't met yet. I'm the
Well,
new
none of that.
senior proposal manager.
Yes, ma'am.
So I do have a quick question for you. I see on this list that you say Google Safe Browsing. So it's a very basic question. So do we use Google as our platform, or do we do Microsoft Edge? Like what is set up
Yeah.
as the preferred browser?
So I don't think that we necessarily have a preferred browser here. Maybe Nina can speak to that. I'm not entirely sure. We do use a managed service provider, FSI. So they're in charge of our, cyber security. But I've seen, large companies allow for either, Edge, Chrome. They're reputable browsing apps. Would I call them an app? Resources. It's when you start getting into some other ones that are less secure, less used browsing platforms, that I would be wary of. So those common ones, Firefox, Google. I don't even know if Safari's out there anymore. Those are traditionally safe. It's when you start going off the reservation, Gideon, like when you want to not be monitored, and you're gonna be like, oh, they'll never find me on this one. I've seen a lot of instances of that at some of the other places that I worked, where, people are doing things that they shouldn't on work time, and they don't want to get caught doing that, right? They're not necessarily insider threats. Maybe they're playing, a game, or betting, or shopping. And so to conceal those activities, they'll use a different browser. And that's where the trouble comes in, is when you're not using reputable browsers. I could probably generate a list of sites that you shouldn't use as your browsing platform, and forward that on. That's something I could do for you guys. What do we have?
Thank you.
Erica. Okay. This is a complicated question. We have a variety of personnel here at FYI. We have classified contracts, like I said in the beginning. And so those people working on those programs have clearances. Jake and I are primarily tasked with managing cleared personnel. And as such, those cleared personnel have to report their foreign travel to us, and it gets put into a government database. Now, you're right, as a federal contractor, we also have what are called covered employees. I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but there's a document called SEED 3 where that's what forced all cleared personnel to report their foreign travel to us, which is kind of new. It used to only be for the special access community. Now it's everybody. But those covered individuals, right? Those are the people with the IT level 2 or a public trust. The documentation says that you would report that to your customer if they mandated that SEED 3 reporting requirement. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. The cleared people are coming to me reporting their foreign travel, but if your customer requires your report of foreign travel contractually, then you would report it to them as well. Does that answer your question? We can discuss that between us and your program manager offline. Okay. Anybody else have any questions, even if they're programmatically driven? And again, we can absolutely, so that's kind of the ask the FSO portion, Erica, which I'm totally happy to discuss. I just don't want to bore everyone to death because it's a lot of rules and regulations and FARs and memos, mandates. But we can definitely discuss, employee situation on a program and what you need to report or not. Anybody else? Don't be shy. Okay. Well, again, we really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day. In closing, if you see something, say something. Whether like we were just discussing, it's a reportable incident regarding a cleared employee or just something seems off. We'll never ever minimize your concerns, and we treat all situations with professionalism and, more importantly, empathy. Right? That's key. So don't be afraid to come to us with any questions or concerns. You're welcome, Demetrius.
Yes, thank you so much, Victoria, Jacob. Really appreciate your presentation. It was really interesting. And I also wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. The video is going to be posted on our intranet, My FYI, and the slides, and under FYI Academy. So if you guys have any questions, how to get to the slides, please let me know. All right. And once again, thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, take care. Thank you, folks. Bye-bye now.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.